The Brony Adventures 5, Chapter 5, Take Cover. Dunstorm and Lunar walk into Dunstorm's and Rainbow Dash's room. Rainbow Dash says, Lunar! She hugs him. Lunar says, Hey, Mom. Rainbow Dash says, What's wrong? Dunstorm says, he was caught by a police officer, smoking and drinking something with some other ponies. Rainbow Dash says, What? Lunar says, Ah! Rainbow Dash says, How dare you! She looks at Dunstorm and says, What did you do about this? Luna says, He grounded me. Rainbow says, Good. Go to your room. Luna says, Yes, Mother. He walks to his room and closes the door. Rainbow says, I can't believe he did that. Why? Dunstorm says, He said he just wanted to have fun, to get away from reality. Rainbow says, Oh, Celestia. Jewel and Star say, Aah! Dunstorm says, I'll take Star, you take Jewel. Rainbow says, Okay. They walk over to them. Dunstorm picks up Star and says, Whoa, full diaper. Rainbow says, Her too. Dunstorm lays Star on the bed and Rainbow lays Jewel on the bed. Dunstorm rotates the diapers, baby powder, and a pan over and says, Prepare to take cover. He opens the diaper. Star starts peeing. Dunstorm rotates the pan in front of himself. Rainbow says, Done. She picks up Jewel and says, Thanks for taking Star. She puts Jewel back in her crib. Dunstorm lowers the pan and says, I think he's done. Star pees into his face. Dunstorm says, Pfft. Now he's done. Pfft. He takes the diaper off and throws it in the trash. He puts the baby powder on and says, Star, stop moving. I'm almost done. Star giggles. Dunstorm puts the diaper on and says, Thank you. Phew. He puts Star back into his crib. Star yawns. Dunstorm smiles and says, Good night, my shining star. Jewel raises her hooves at him. He picks her up and says, How's my favorite little light? He rubs his nose against hers. She giggles. Dunstorm says, I love you, Jewel. I love you too, Star. Ernest smiles and says, It still amazes me how great you are with babies and kids. Dunstorm smiles and says, I'm great with you too. Ernest blushes and says, Thunderstorm. Dunstorm says, You're great too, a natural born mother. Ernest says, Thanks. Dunstorm says, It's true. He puts his head against hers and says, You are a wonderful wife and queen too. Rainbow Dash smiles even wider and says, You are a wonderful husband and natural born father too. They kiss. Frost runs into the room and says, Ew! Dunstorm and Rainbow Dash laugh. Frost says, Where's my daddy? Winter opens his door. Frost says, Daddy! So she runs over to him and hugs him. Winter says, My little girl. David, while standing, says, Winter had to go to the Crystal Empire for something, so I brought her here. Winter hugs her tight and says, Thank you. David says, You're welcome. Bye, Frost. Frost says, Bye, Uncle David. David smiles and leaves. Rainbow Dash says, David's not her uncle. Star is. Dunstorm says, Her and David are just that close. He's like an uncle to her. Rainbow Dash says, Oh, duh. I can be so stupid sometimes. Dunstorm says, Hey, a mayor as beautiful as you can never be stupid. Dash blushes and says, Thank you. Dunstorm says, I mean it. You are never stupid, no matter what you do. You'll always be amazing in my eyes. Rainbow Dash smiles even wider and kisses him and says, Looks like Jewel fell asleep. Dunstorm smiles and says, Good night, my little light. He puts Jewel back in her crib and kisses her on her forehead and says, I'll always be here for you. I promise. Jewel yawns. Dunstorm smiles even wider. He walks to Lunar's room and opens the door. Frost says, Grandpa! She hugs him. Dunstorm says, Hey, my little ice cube. Lunar says, What do you want, Dad? Dunstorm says, First, to tell you that you're grounded for 2 months, and 2, to tell you that no matter what, you can always come to me or your mother. Whatever you try to get away from, you'll always be able to. I promise. Jewel yawns. Dunstorm smiles even wider. He walks to Lunar's room and opens the door. Frost says, Grandpa! She hugs him. Dunstorm says, Hey, my little ice cube. Lunar says, What do you want, Dad? Dunstorm says, First, to tell you that you're grounded for 2 months, and 2, to tell you that no matter what, you can always come to me or your mother. We won't judge or abandon you. We love you, son. We're always here. Lunar says, thanks, Dad. Thunderstorm nods and closes the door. Frost hops off his back and says, Grandma! She runs over and hugs Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash smiles and says, Hey, Frost. Lunar opens his door and says, Dad? Thunderstorm says, Yes, son. Lunar says, Can we talk now? Just you and me? Thunderstorm says, Of course. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6. Goldell. Thunderstorm walks into Lunar's room and closes the door. Lunar says, Dad? I'm afraid. Thunderstorm says, Of what? Lunar says, That I'll mess up. That I won't raise Frost right. She's my first, and I love her more than anything. I don't want to ruin her or her life. Thunderstorm smiles and says, And it's because you love her so much to worry like this that you'll be just fine. Follow your heart and you and her will be just fine. Skulu was my first, and I was beyond worried. It's because of that worry and my love for her that she came out just fine, and so will Frost. You're doing just fine, son. Just don't forget to tell her that you love her. Lunar smiles and says, I never will. Thanks, Dad. Thunderstorm smiles even wider and says, You came out just fine, too. You're welcome, son. They hug. Thunderstorm says, I love you, Lunar. Lunar says, I love you too, Dad. Thunderstorm walks out of the room and says, I'm going to take a walk. Dash says, Okay. Thunderstorm walks outside. He starts walking. He reaches the back of his castle. A little filly is crying. Thunderstorm walks up to her and kneels down and says, Hey, what's wrong? The little filly says, I lost my parents, and I've gone from town to town and city to city looking for some pony to take me in, but no pony will. She starts crying again. The storm wraps her wing around her and says, Please stop crying. Let me see those beautiful blue eyes. The little filly smiles and lowers her hooves. Thunderstorm says, There they are. He smiles and says, What's your name? The little filly says, Codell. Thunderstorm says, Codell. What a beautiful name. Codell says, Thank you. Thunderstorm says, You're welcome. Codell, if you don't mind, I would love to take you in. Codell looks up at Thunderstorm and says, Really? Thunderstorm says, Really? Codell smiles even wider and hugs him. Tears go down her cheeks and she says, Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thunderstorm says, I love you, my little treasure. Codell says, You just met me. Thunderstorm says, And you already melted my heart. Codell smiles. Thunderstorm says, Welcome home, my little treasure. Codell hops onto his back, and Thunderstorm stands up and walks back to the front of the castle. He walks in Thunderstorm's and Rainbow Dash's room. Thunderstorm walks in with Codell on his back. Codell says, Whoa, big room. Whose castle is this? Rainbow Dash says, Who is this? Thunderstorm says, Codell. She lost her parents. She's been looking for a new family. Rainbow Dash smiles and says, Welcome home, Codell. Codell smiles and says, Thank you. Thunderstorm says, Oh, this is my castle. I am one of the co-kings of Equestria, and Dashi is my queen. Codell's jaw drops, and she says, You're King Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm nods. Goodell says, I've been taken in by... She faints. Thunderstorm catches her with his wing and says, whoa. He gets her back on his back and walks to the bed. He levitates her onto it. Rainbow Dash says, poor thing. Thunderstorm says, she'll be okay now. She has a new home and family. He looks at her and says, she can have Rain's old ring. Rainbow Dash says, where was she? Thunderstorm says, behind the castle, crying. I couldn't just keep walking, and then I saw her eyes. They tore into my soul. I couldn't leave her. Rainbow Dash says, thanks Celestia, you didn't. She's probably starving. Thunderstorm says, I'll get her some food. He walks into the kitchen. Godot's eyes slowly open. She looks at Rainbow Dash and says, where am I? Who are you? Rainbow Dash says, you're in Thunderstorm's castle. I'm Rainbow Dash, his wife. Godel shoots up and says, King Thunderstorm, I remember. He found me and talked to me, and then he took me in. Rainbow Dash smiles. Thunderstorm walks out of the kitchen and says, look who's awake. He walks up to her and gives her a cupcake. Godel says, thanks. She gobbles it down. Thunderstorm says, you are starving. I'll get you some more food. Godel says, wait. She hugs him and says, thanks for taking me in. I'm a homeless filly, and you're a king. Thunderstorm says, stop right there. You're not just some homeless filly. You're a special, beautiful, smart, kind, and amazing filly. You are special. You are special, Godel. Not some homeless filly. Never forget that. He sits her down and walks into the kitchen. Tears go down Godel's cheeks, and she says, I love you, King Thunderstorm. Thank you. Rainbow Dash says, you can just call him Thunderstorm. He won't mind. Godel says, okay. Rainbow Dash hugs her and says, it's alright. Let it out. Godel says, I'm home. She starts crying and says, I'm home. Rainbow Dash smiles even wider and hugs her tight and says, yes, you are. End of Chapter 6. The Brony Adventures 5. Chapter 7. The Jizz Factory. The Storm dives down into the Rainbow Factory. He lands and says, Ratchet! Where are you? Ratchet says, Hey, Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm says, what's going on in here? Ratchet says, I found something more rich to make rainbows out of. Want to see? Thunderstorm says, I guess. Ratchet says, right in this room. They walk in. Thunderstorm says, what the hey? Is that milking machines on stallions? Ratchet says, yep, and we're not trying to get milk. Thunderstorm says, what? A black-coated pony with pink eyes and a blue mane walks up to Thunderstorm and says, hey, King Thunderstorm. She rose up against him. Ratchet says, put your wings down, Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm blushes and says, sorry. Ratchet says, it's okay. Good job, Jizz. Thunderstorm says, Jizz. Ratchet says, she's a slut. She's here to get the stallions aroused, and then the machine milks them. Thunderstorm says, Jizz says, thank you, sir. But I like this one. He's a king. Thunderstorm's wings shoot up. Ratchet smiles and says, Jizz, leave him alone. He's married. Save it for the others. Jizz says, but he likes me. Thunderstorm blushes and says, Jizz giggles and says, don't fight it. Thunderstorm takes a step back and says, no, don't look at me. Jizz says, why? Did my eyes mesmerize you? Thunderstorm says, get away. Jizz says, look at me, big boy. You know you want to. Thunderstorm says, Ratchet, I think I'll cut my visit short. Bye. Jizz says, not so fast. She nuzzles him and says, now you're looking at me. Dozle's wings shoot up. Jizz smiles and kisses him. Ratchet says, get a bucket, quick! Two ponies put a bucket underneath Thunderstorm. His sperm falls into it. Ratchet says, dang, he'll have the bucket full before 10 minutes go by. Jizz says, my little king, I'll make you very happy. She puts her tongue into his ear. The pony says, it's full. They take the bucket away. Ratchet says, put it with the others. The ground underneath Thunderstorm cracks. His eyes go blank. He steps away from Jizz and says, I'm sorry. You're a very attractive mare, but I'm a happily married pony. Jizz says, you won't leave me. Thunderstorm says, goodbye, Jizz. Jizz says, he actually managed to leave. Ratchet says, he went Rager. When he's in that form, he can't feel anything except rage. Jizz says, a Rager form? Such power. And his speed. Ratchet says, oh boy. Back to work, Jizz. Jizz says, oh, right, where's that bucket of his sperm kept? Ratchet says, with the others. Where else? Jizz says, I'm taking my lunch break. She zooms off. Ratchet says, okay. Above ground, Thunderstorm lands. His eyes focus, and he says, that was close. Ah, dang it. And Rainbow Dash says, hello? Hello, Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm says, Dashy! Hi. Rainbow Dash says, I thought I told you to never go down there again. Thunderstorm says, where? Rainbow Dash says, the factory. Thunderstorm says, don't worry, I will never go there again. Rainbow Dash says, good. Why? Thunderstorm says, Ratchet milks stallions down there. That's why. Bye. Rainbow Dash says, okay. Bye. Thunderstorm flies to David's and Charlie's house. He runs in and says, David! David says, what? Thunderstorm says, can I head out here for a few months? David says, why? Thunderstorm says, because when Dashy finds out what I did, she's gonna kill me. David says, sure, I guess. Thunderstorm says, thanks. Joe says, hey, Thunder. Thunderstorm says, hey, Joe, how is my little cherry? Joe says, great, I'm pregnant. Scooter smiles. Thunderstorm says, congratulations. Oh yeah, I gotta plan a party for Draconics and Fluttershy. They're waiting too. Charlie says, I'll help with the wedding. Thunderstorm says, great. Thanks, Charlie. Charlie says, you're welcome. Cheryl says, why are you here, Thunder? Thunderstorm says, to hide. Cheryl says, from Rainbow Dash? Thunderstorm says, yes. Cheryl giggles and says, good luck. Scooter says, good luck, Grandpa. They walk into Cheryl's room. Thunderstorm says, thank you. I don't need it. Charlie giggles and walks into the kitchen. David says, well, I'm going to go practice some illegal magic some more. He walks into his room. Thunderstorm says, I'm going to hide. He zooms off. End of Chapter 7. The Brony Adventures 5, Chapter 8. Love is Stronger Than Anger. A few days later, Rainbow Dash walks into David's and Charlie's house. Charlie says, Rainbow Dash, why are you here? Rainbow Dash says, I'm looking for a thunderstorm. Charlie says, why? Rainbow Dash says, he hasn't shown up for a couple of days. I found out what he did in the factory, but now I'm just worried. Thunderstorm comes out from underneath the couch and stands up and says, Dashy, Rainbow Dash says, Thunderstorm! She hugs him. Thunderstorm says, I've been here. I was worried that you'd get beyond angry and slap me again. Rainbow Dash says, Ratchet told me that you left before it went too far. I'm not that mad. Thunderstorm says, oh, I'm sorry I made you so worried. I'll understand if you want to slap me now. Rainbow Dash says, I'm too glad to have you back to be mad. I love you. She kisses him. Thunderstorm smiles and says, I love you too, Dashy. Let's go home. I got a party to plan and a wife to make up with. He winks at her. Rainbow Dash says, yes, you do. Thunderstorm says, oh, in that case. He picks her up and lifts his wings and says, bye, Charlie. Charlie says, bye. David, an explosion goes off. David runs out of his room and says, well, that backfired. Charlie says, what was that? David says, a spell at the duck went very wrong. Don't worry, I'll fix the room. Charlie says, I know you will. She kisses him and walks into the kitchen. Dave says, oh, she's not mad. Huh, cool. He was back into his room. At Thunderstorm's and Rainbow Dash's room, they walk in. Thunderstorm freezes. Godell says, your journal is really interesting. Thunderstorm says, Godell, please put that down. Godell says, like, this one part right here. Why did Mother have to give me such a strange last name? Rising. What pony has Rising for a last name? Rainbow Dash says, your last name is Rising? Thunderstorm says, he sighs and says, yes. Rainbow Dash says, why did you never tell me or any pony else? Thunderstorm says, because it's embarrassing. Rising. It's a strange last name. Luckily, you, Skulu, Rain, and Lunar got Storm for your last names because no pony knows about my last name. Godell says, I'm sorry, Thunderstorm. I didn't want to embarrass you. I just wanted to show how interesting your journal is. You could be a writer. I shouldn't have read it. I'm sorry. Thunderstorm smiles and says, it's okay. I got nothing to hide from you, my little treasure, or you, Dashy. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Rainbow Dash says, it's okay. I understand. Thunderstorm kisses her and says, you're awesome. Rainbow Dash blushes and says, I know. Godell smiles and says, my parents were in love like you too. Tears appear in her eyes, and she says, and now they're gone. She starts crying. Thunderstorm hugs her and wraps both wings around her. Godell buries her face into his chest, crying. Thunderstorm says, I'm so sorry. I'm here. Let it out. I'll never leave you, my little treasure. I promise. Godell says, my daddy promised the same thing. Thunderstorm says, of course he did. He loves you more than any pony ever could. But I love you too, and I won't leave you. Rainbow Dash says, he won't. He's never left any pony, she thinks, for long. Godell says, really? Thunderstorm says, really. I have been defeated and I have died, but I have friends and family who won't let me go, and I don't want to leave them. I never would. Godell smiles. Skulu says, hey Godell, do you want to be a Kmart Crusader? Godell says, sure. Skulu says, awesome, let's go. They run out of the room. Thunderstorm says, they're getting along fine. Rainbow Dash says, they'll be like sisters. Thunderstorm says, Dashy? Rainbow Dash says, yes. Thunderstorm says, how can you love me? Rainbow Dash says, what do you mean? Thunderstorm says, I'm half dark pony. A raging spirit is in me. I've killed so many in cold blood, and I'm not the sanest pony around. Rainbow, Rainbow Dash smiles and says, I don't care if you are a half-dark pony or have a rich spirit inside you. You've only killed to protect some pony or Equestria except for his apple, and that wasn't your fault, and you are sane. Otherwise, you wouldn't be such a great father and husband or a wonderful king. She kisses him and says, how about we make up now? Dunsmore smiles and says, let's end of chapter 8. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.